Andy Frost, welcome to Making Disciples. You head up Share Jesus International, and that's where I've known you from for many years. You're a fantastic speaker, really inspirational, not just in what you say, but how you live and your family and Joe, and which is kind of why we wanted to have this conversation today.
Great. Yeah, mate. It's giving it a go, really, isn't it? So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
good.
Now, you've written a book with Katherine Hill. Now, in my mind, Rob Parsons and Katherine Hill, if anybody watching don't know who they are, you've seriously missed out on years of beautiful Bible. I mean, both of them are phenomenal. Katherine is just a gift to the church, isn't she? And you've written this book,
Yeah.
Raising Faith with her. What's the main, what is the key content of that book, Raising Faith?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they're both very involved in family stuff, a whole variety of different family things. This book specifically is for Christian parents, looking at how, as Christian parents, we can inspire a faith in our children. And it looks very practically, really, at how do we make faith practical, that actually it can be lived out in the home so our kids pick up on what the Christian faith is all about and discover what it is to follow Jesus. And it's kind of a piece of research which shows that about half of kids by the age of 18 who grew up in Christian families will choose not to follow Jesus. We want to see that stat transformed and changed. We want to see many more kids knowing who God is. Ultimately, it's their choice. But actually, in the early years, we can do a lot of things very practically to inspire our kids to know more of what the Christian faith is all about.
So I suppose there's two questions then to come off that. One is, well, what can you do? But does the research give you any sense of what not to do? Is there any sense of what has caused young people to get to 18 and leave faith behind?
Not specifically the research. I think what's happened, though, is that the church has become very, very good at doing children's work and youth work. It's been fantastic. But what's happened is it's become so good at doing it that parents feel they can no longer be involved. They're no longer the experts, and the church now is the experts. And almost you have to have a PhD in ancient Greek and Hebrew to really be able to understand how you can share it with your kids or be super cool like a youth worker is. And what we've actually done, I think myself, even as a youth worker, I've marginalised the role of parents in the kids' faith journey. And by doing so, almost have undermined that responsibility they all have. And looking at it very biblically, see that throughout Scripture is a really important idea that parents pass on faith to their kids. But that's almost been lost from how we do church, I think, today.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? And the church has never aimed to take over parenting. It's never aimed to take over, but somehow in wanting to not lose kids from church, we've upped our game.
We have.
But at the same time, we've then de-skilled another group of people.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's super sad then when you realise we've potentially caused, in trying to do a good thing, we've also caused a bad thing.
And you can see how it swings from side to side, can't you, really, in church life? You do something very well and it actually impacts something else. And I think perhaps as the church, we've actually undermined the role that parents have. Often we speak on the passages in Deuteronomy where Moses is speaking to the people going into the promised land, and they've experienced some incredible things of God. They're about to enter into this new land, and he's about to leave them. And he says time and time again, pass these things on to your children.
Yeah.
And there's the kind of idea that whatever you've experienced of God, pass that on to your kids, pass on those stories. Yeah. And so for me, parents, it isn't about knowing everything, but what is it you have experienced of God? What do you know of him? What are the stories you can tell about what God's done in your life? And they are the things to inspire your own children with. And in the Deuteronomy passage, it talks about very practically what do you do in the everyday of life. It's as you're walking down the street, as you're putting your kid to bed, as you're getting up in the morning, as you're doing life, share these things about who God is.
Yeah, so we've started to drift into what we can do. So this is good.
Oh, yeah.
So let's. I live in a really thriving hustle bustle part of East London, but parents feel very de-skilled. Very often parents don't feel that they were parented that well and are now trying to parent. So let's imagine you've got we'll imagine we've got a 4-year-old, and let's imagine you've got a 10-year-old, because it's different with different age groups, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
What for you have you been learning around how can we help our 4-year-olds or our 3-year-olds? What's the early stages that a family can, what are the early things they can do that would help?
I mean, there's a guy called Westerhoff who's done a whole bunch of research looking at different kind of levels of faith, really. And for the younger age group, it's really about where you belong, and that sense of family is so important. So very much in how we parent in that phase models something of who God is. So certain things about different age groups, and there's certain things that are about what are some of the values we want to inspire in our kids, and how do we punctuate our lives with the reality of God day by day. So whether it be a 4-year-old or a 10-year-old, there'll be some questions I'd be asking. For example, how do we show our kids how important prayer is? And we all pray in different ways. You often think we need to have a family devotions time. And that might work, but for our family growing up, my dad tried it. It completely failed. And I've tried it with my kids. It hasn't quite with my kids either. So but actually, I'd be able to punctuate my daily life in moments of prayer to show my kids how important prayer is. It's how we talk with God, and it's how God leads us and God speaks to us. So very practically, there's one question around prayer, one around how we read the Bible, one around how we have more deeper kind of God conversations, one about the life we're living, and then finally about how we have traditions and how we involve other people in the wider community. So kind of 5 things I found helpful to whether I've got a 4-year-old or a 10-year-old, how can I use these as questions to provoke what I might do in the day-to-day?
Okay, can we just hit pause there then? Let's just go through that. You went through those so fast.
Yeah.
What was the first one?
Prayer.
Praying. And did you just say that you did? Can I just go? Did you say that it hasn't worked for you praying?
So having whole family devotions where we have, I always picture the perfect family, an hour a week. Someone gets on the guitar, we open the Bible, and we have a kind of an hour-long.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
That hasn't worked.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Exactly, but I think some parents think to pass my faith, I've got to almost create a church service in my lounge on a Thursday afternoon with my kids. That is what discipleship looks like.
So what does prayer look like then for your family? How do you do that?
So a whole variety of things. I mean, first of all, it's how I model my faith to my kids. So I pray a lot, but I often pray in my head. But I've become really intentional about praying it out loud. So my kids hear these very short prayers throughout the day and think, oh, Dad's praying again, because it becomes a natural thing of what I'm doing when I'm going about my life. And then with them, it's about how we can help them pray in different ways and how they can be aware, how they can connect with God. And it's been a very little bit different age, but the questions stayed the same. So often we do high five prayers at bedtime. We do high five, thanking God for what He's done in the day.
What's that? What's high five?
The high fives. But we'll kind of thank God for maybe 5 things and high five saying thank you to God for, this friend at school was nice to me, or thank God for the amazing day it's been, the sunshine, whatever else it could be, but helping my kids to be thankful through prayer and just reflecting back to God. It's been about saying grace, punctuating our day with moments of saying grace before our meals and being thankful. It's about in the morning sometimes having a quick team talk. We get in a quick huddle and we say a short prayer for the day ahead. And it's been about saying there were different ways of praying. So my daughter, she goes to a Catholic school. She gets taught these very formal prayers. So from my head to my heart, from my shoulder to my shoulder. And one day she says to me, Daddy, you know what? You're not very good at praying, are you? I'm like, oh, thanks, darling. So, well, you just make your prayers up, don't you? And to say, well, there's a whole variety of ways of praying, and they're all good. Whether you use formal prayers or off-the-cuff prayers, it's showing my kids that there are a whole bunch of different ways of engaging with God.
Okay, that's great. So prayer, number 2
is the Bible.
Go on. What's that look like?
Sorry?
Tell me what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I mean, I want my kids to know that it's not just a list of rules and regulations. The Bible is this unfolding story of who God is and who we are. And so for me, helping my kids understand the whole breadth of the Bible has been important. Then about bringing it to life, the emotion, the feelings that you have as you read Scripture. So when they're very little, we used to get all their teddy bears out, and we'd reenact Bible stories with the teddy bears. And I'd recreate kind of the calming of the storm by putting our couches together and getting some sheets and bottles of water and almost bringing the stuff to life. And even now we'll read the Bible maybe on a hilltop or by a lake and try and reflect upon the story, so it becomes very real and they're engaging their emotions in the whole thing. And it's been about buying different Bibles at different age groups as they get older. My daughter's now 7, my eldest, and giving her first set of Bible notes and hearing her read out loud the Bible has been really kind of profound, that she's beginning to engage with it herself now. So a whole variety of ways. How can we make the Bible relevant and show that what we are learning in the Bible impacts how we live? So again, asking the question, what do you think this means for us, this story? What might we know about God from this story? So they're kind of very practically working out what it looks like. Yeah, that's the Bible.
I love that. Can I just ask a bit more about that? Yeah. So we've really encouraged members of our church to use the Jesus Storybook Bible.
Brilliant.
Really beautifully illustrated. Every story points to Jesus.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I even give it to recovering addicts to read as their first Bible because it's just so simple as you come to faith. I'd love your view on this. Which is more important, reading the Bible from the text to the children, or telling the Bible stories to your children? Just telling them. Is there a difference? Do you think one is better than the other, or?
I think it's both, and I think I want them to understand they actually come from a book, and there's something they can begin to engage with themselves. But at the same time, I think it's really weird. My kids sometimes for bedtime story ask me to preach. So I'll kind of tell a story from the Bible and give a reflection on it. It's quite bizarre, but actually there's something powerful about when we put biblical stories in our own words. So you could tell them the story of Zacchaeus from the viewpoint of the tree, and pretend you were a tree, and then tell the story of how this guy climbs you. And you can retell that story, and it really engages their emotions, engages their imagination, and shows them something of who Christ is. So for me, it's about really how do we practically encourage them to engage with the stories. And part of it is about how we see the importance of the Bible, and so actually unpacking how they begin to read it for themselves, and how you begin to reflect upon how God speaks to us through this ancient text.
So I'm just thinking of some of the families that I work with, new Christians working out for themselves. How do you do this? So really, prayer, like a real easy way into discipling our children and showing Jesus to our kids, is at bedtime, isn't it? Yeah. And being able to tell a Bible story or read a Bible story, and to be able to just do some very simple prayers with them at bedtime. We still do this now with our 12 and 14-year-olds. Right. We'll go in and we'll pray with them every night, a little prayer before bedtime. And it's a simple way of every night just bringing God into that moment, isn't it? And it doesn't need to be very long. And if anyone that struggles to read, there are more creative ways. So I found that YouTube, the Jesus Storybook Bibles, people have animated those stories. Really? You could even play those on your phone or on your iPad. You can play them, and then so Daisy and Isaac would love it when we would watch David Suchet, who was Poirot, because it's him reading them, and we'd have David Suchet, David Suchet read the Bible story, then we'd talk about it, and then we'd pray, and it was just so easy. Yeah, because who doesn't want to hear David Suchet read the Bible to them at night?
I still hear him regularly, so it's good.
Yeah. So that was two. What was number 3?
The third was about having deeper conversations. Yeah. And that, for me, I think often we might wait for a kind of crisis moment to talk about our faith, but actually, how do we intentionally try and have deeper chat? So, for example, very randomly, we walk through a graveyard to get to a local park. Yeah. And my kids often stop and look at the gravestones and try and read them and try and work out how someone's died and stuff. But they have all these questions that naturally come up about what happens when you die. Yeah. What does heaven look like? Yeah. Where are our grandparents? All those kind of questions they have. And it's actually, how can we see the things that they're asking about, the things that they're intrigued by, and begin to give them a Christian worldview, an understanding of how God sees the world and how we see the world from his point of view. So it's also not just walking past gravestones, but even the programs they're watching. So if they're watching a cartoon, we kind of often would say, hey, let's just, what do we learn about that cartoon? Was it a good choice or a bad choice that character made? So again, just begin to try and be intentional in the everyday of life. How do we tease out deeper conversations and reflect on the things that we're being given by the world and what we think as a Christian family and how we see the world?
A little while ago, I was in Stratford with Isaac, and there was a homeless guy, and he spoke to us. We kind of spoke to him, and we walked on. And I said to Isaac, "What do you think Daddy could have done different in that?
Wow,
what could I have done different?" And we were going to Greg's to get pasties, as you do, and Isaac said we could have bought him a pasty, and I said, well, we still could, couldn't we? So then we bought him a pasty with ours, and we went back, and I got Isaac to then give the pasty to the guy. Great. And it's just using those normal, what could we have done differently? What would have God want? And that, it's the intentionality there, isn't it? Being intentional. So prayer.
See, with that, so also in the beginning, so much stuff at school as well. Is how do we get them to reflect what they're learning about at school in a bigger viewpoint? So they're learning about the Romans. hey, you know what? That's the same time that Jesus was alive, and actually unpacking that a little bit, or
Yeah.
learning about the universe. Well, let's just see what God says in Genesis, and just how we relate what they're learning about to very practically what that looks like from Scripture and from a faith point of view.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's great. It's called real learning, isn't it? When you anchor things into reality.
Yeah.
Prayer, reading the Bible, intentionality. Number 4.
Fourth thing would be about there's two more. One more would be about the wider family and the wider community.
Yeah.
And so actually, how do we involve other people? That as parents, we have this really important role. But let's also be intentional in using the church. But I guess the danger is we become just going to church and rather than helping our kids belong to church. Research shows there are two important things to belong to church. There's first of all the importance of having authentic relationships. So how do we deepen those relationships in with the church family? And it could be we're going to intentionally involve somebody, invite someone for lunch once a month from the church to come and hang out with our kids and share their story with them. Or whatever it might do to kind of build that sense of authentic relationship. And second of all, it's about finding a place they can serve in the church if they get practically involved, whether that be helping serving teas and coffees or on the welcoming team or some things they actually feel they are being involved in the whole church community.
Yeah.
And it's also about wider, how do we involve kind of, many people have godparents for their kids, and you have that kind of moment where you choose a godparent for your child. About a year in, you almost forget about them. But again, how can we be proactive as parents and saying, I want these people here to be involved in my child's life story, and I'm going to encourage them to really find some key ways they can do that. So a very simple idea is to encourage maybe some people to pray for your kids, and you get photographs of those different people, and you put that photographs on the wall of the child's bedroom.
Yeah.
Then not time to say to your child, guess what? These 5 people here are praying for you regularly. Why don't you now pray for them? That's where kind of praying cross-generationally.
Yeah.
So a whole bunch of things you can do around the wider thing called the church.
Yeah. So that's being part of another family, a big God family, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then what was number 5?
The fifth one would be about habits and rituals and living a missional life ourselves, showing our kids that the Christian faith isn't about just being religious and attending church, it's about actually living life in all its fullness and modelling, again, I guess how you met the guy who's homeless. How can we model generosity and model being a hospitable community and how we use our money and all those kind of very practical things and modelling what it is to be a follower of Jesus, but also using habits and rituals as well. So things like Easter and Christmas, what are some of the habits we're going to create in our family which celebrate these important moments on the Christian calendar and gives it kind of real practical meanings that in the years to come our kids will think back, oh yeah, every year during Advent we'd think about how we could be kind to other people, or every year before Easter we gave something up for Lent and helped us to reflect on this. So again, just some habits that we can do in the home. Some of them might be seasonal, some might be actually weekly habits we have, which almost help our kids have this sense that God punctuates our lives rather than being just about Sunday.
So, Christmas, Easter, Pentecost, they're all gifts, aren't they, in the rhythm of the year?
Yeah.
And there's a danger that if we don't use them to disciple our kids, then culture will use them to disciple them with chocolate.
Exactly.
Or with
chocolate,
Santa.
bunnies and so and
yeah.
And even
that's great.
hard, some kind of key things in the year, but how do we, remember these things and help our kids to work out how it works out in our lives? Maybe visiting a food bank and supporting that, or whatever else it could be. Yeah,
that's great. We did something here this Lent where we gave our families what we called a Lent bag, and in the bag was 5 items, and each one referenced a different week in Lent. And the idea was you could take this item out. So week 1 was just some soil, some dust, and it was to remind us that we were made by God who took the dust of the earth and formed us. So there was a little Bible passage and something to do, and that basically happened throughout the whole of Lent. Each week, one week was some nails, and it just walked you through. And it's just trying to use the Christian calendar of the year in a way that helps our kids understand there's a journey here that we're on. Yeah. These events just don't pop up. Christmas doesn't just pop up. It's a part of a bigger story, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's prayer, Bible, intentionality, church, family, then using the rhythms of the year, but also getting them maybe activating. So we did something at Christmas where we baked, and it was Easter as well. The baked biscuits. So Easter ones were Easter eggs, biscuits cooked, and then they were taken to the shopkeepers, to neighbours, and it was a way of
Right.
just blessing people. But it was about getting the kids to actively do something that showed their faith was reaching outwards,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was that was really lovely. Can
Yeah.
I ask you? So that fourth one about family, I think, and we've touched on it already about responsibility. If I was to
Mm.
say, whose responsibility is it to disciple our kids?
Mm.
What would your answer be?
I think it's parents first and foremost, but I think it is a shared responsibility. I think when parents try and do it alone, there's danger there. And when parents try and delegate it to the church, there's danger there.
Mm.
It is the wider community. But I think parents have a kind of key role in that. And I mean, your kids might spend an hour and a half a week in church, but particularly when you're young kids, there can be 30 or 40 hours a week of contact time in the home. And if we're not modelling it in there, I mean, ultimately, you're not modelling how you just ascribe to a certain mental, logical statement. You're modelling actually how you do relationship with God. Yeah. And that impacts everything. But it's really about, also about how do we frame that for our children. So, I mean, for me, having my own personal kind of quiet times with God, I used to enjoy those moments before my kids were born. They you kind of gradually wake up and the sun will trickle through the curtain. You kind of gradually open the Bible and have a nice chilled out morning. But now my kids dive into my bed at 5:30 and want to play. So it's a very different way of how my own faith with God has changed in this. And I've had to show my kids how I model it. So in our house, we have a prayer chair. We kind of sit there for 10 minutes a day to try and reflect upon who God is. Again, my kids now use the prayer chair themselves. They kind of picked up on these kind of things. But it's about making what is invisible visible for my kids. They can understand what is going on. And that's the danger is when we close our door and say we're going to have a time alone with the Lord, they might kind of think, what are they doing in that room? What happens in that room? But really unpacking how God speaks to us, how God leads us. It's been really important for me.
But I would also kind of throw in there that there's a lot of us who struggle with that ourselves as adults, quiet time. We struggle with that. And there's a lady at our place who was really struggling, was feeling quite guilty. And she struggled to read the Bible, find time to read the Bible. So I actually said to her, the Bible's never meant to be read on its own. You're always meant to read it with others. What would happen if it was your little lad that you read the Bible with? And he became the one that you read the Bible with and prayed with. So that you doing it with your son at bedtime becomes a way of you growing and being discipled as well. So sometimes, there's lots of us that would really struggle with that idea of a quiet time. But maybe we need to just be a bit more creative and almost take off the shackles so that we can be more creative in how we can read the Bible with our kids, but also be doing it for ourselves in that. It's not just for them. It feeds us as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, what often happens is before kids, we have a lot more time, a lot more space. Suddenly you have kids and suddenly everything changes, and finding a new rhythm doesn't ever happen for some people. Just working out what is a new rhythm in this, particularly got little kids and they're not sleeping at night time. I used to find there are times where I try and read the Bible and I'd be just so exhausted. I had no desire to read it. I'd read kind of like one paragraph and reread it 4 or 5 times and it still wouldn't go in. So I had to work out a new rhythm for me in that time, how I was going to engage with God myself. And actually, kids can be a real gift for that. But the danger is we want our kids to try and believe something and follow something that we're not doing ourselves. So however we do it, whether it be with our child or whether it be, 5 minutes as we're walking the dog or whatever else it could be, it's working out actually how we engage with God ourselves and how we model that to our children. But it hasn't got to be, you're right, an hour in the morning done this way. But it's working out how it looks like really, and being honest with ourselves in that too.
Love that. Absolutely. Andy, thank you so much. Before you go, can I ask about so the Raising Faith book, and you've got a DVD that goes alongside that now. Just tell me about that project.
So Raising Faith has been a resource to come out of Care for the Family. It's a kind of book which kind of it's a full kind of like magazine really, very short, snappy articles. Most parents haven't got time to read for a massive manual on how to be a Christian parent. So really unpacks some really kind of practical things you can do in the home. Some practical ideas about how we parent as well. So it's called Raising Faith. And there's a new DVD kind of box set alongside that, which can be unpacked over 6 weeks, done as a church or a small group, looking at how as Christian parents we can help each other and support each other. And as part of the whole campaign, we've launched a thing called the Kitchen Table Project.
Yeah, tell me about this. This is really exciting.
It's called the Kitchen Table because ultimately faith gets passed on. The kitchen table is where you might have a meal. It's where you do your homework. It's where you play games. It's the idea of where we do life. This is where faith gets passed on more than being in a classroom type setting. So it's called the Kitchen Table Project. And if you Google it and go online, you find it on Facebook as well. And every single week, there's a whole bunch of resources being pushed out there, from kind of quotes to Bible notes to ideas to do with your kids to short videos, a whole variety of stuff, saying there's no one way of doing this. But for all of us, and the key thing is, how can we be intentional and keep being reminded again of what might we do this week to inspire faith in our kids?
Mate, that's incredible. I can imagine there'll be a few people who watch this now and go, wow, this is an amazing family. This is incredible that they're doing this with their kids. Give us one thing you've done wrong. Something you've got, do you know what? That was a mistake we made. You show us that you're not perfect.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm still learning, and there are days when I'm knackered and I lose it with my kids. But
so you lose them?
No, lose it, not
lose
them.
it.
I haven't lost them yet. I mean, I'm sure that will happen one day. But when I just lose it, I kind of get really cross. And there are lots of mistakes I make. And again, I even think this, that sometimes as parents, we can think our mistakes mean we can't do it. But actually, our mistakes are great opportunities. So when my kids have caught me lying, or my kids have caught me doing something really un-Christian, I've been able to talk to my kids, actually, I'm still learning. I'm still discovering more of what it is to follow Jesus. I still make mistakes. Yeah. And being honest in that is actually a great teaching point, saying, actually, I need your forgiveness, kids. Will you forgive me? And modeling this whole thing called grace. So it's I definitely haven't got it down. Being involved in this project has been much more intentional, and I haven't got all the answers. And again, my kids have to choose for themselves one day as whether or not they want to follow God. But I can choose in the days ahead just to be intentional in the little things, in punctuating my day. Not always getting it perfect, but just giving it my best shot. And when I get it wrong, just saying, kids, I'm sorry, I've messed up here.
Mate, thank you. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving us those 5 things. That's really, they've stuck in my head as well. For me to think about. So brilliant. Thank you so much, and bless you, and just look forward to seeing what more comes out of kind of raising faith. Awesome. And the stuff that you're making. Bless you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
All the best.